There's just some sort of terrible purpose vibe that I get from This Must Be, that this feels like the thing that launches us into the rest of the series. So far we've had Hadrian deconstruction and the war getting closer. This feels like we have just crossed the threshold into the rest of the universe of the story. It's probably the single most important passage that we've read so far.
Welcome to another episode of the Devil's Rest Book Club, where we dive into the details of Christopher Ruocchio's The Sun Eater universe. I am your lowly, humble, hostly knight, showing the satrap of our podcast, Drew, around these ruins. My name is Cameron, and welcome to the show. Drew, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing wonderfully. Very excited to be back in the world of Sun Eater. Today we're going to be covering chapters 64 through 66 of the first book of the series, Empire of Silence. We continue to see some interesting stuff happening. It's a good day to be looking at some Sun Eater stuff.
Today's a doozy, for sure.
Yes,
Today's a doozy.
For sure.
But before we get into it, we began a new arc last episode. What happened?
So last week we covered some really big stuff. Hadrian has been disinherited from his house, and due to this sort of fallout from Guillaume Voss's death and the subsequent wrath potentially coming from his mother, he has been forced into fleeing the palace, and he is able to negotiate himself into going to Calaga with Falca. So we're going to pick up our story moving straight forward into being at Calaga.
So now we begin chapter 64, The Larger World, with him having been in Calaga for a few weeks, right? He had his first experience with it. He had that weird moment last time where he touched the stone and it was ice cold, and to nobody else, like, because it was black. Nobody else, when they touched it, felt anything. Everything about this place is super weird. But now they've been there for a few weeks, and the whole time, Hadrian basically has been a guest / day laborer for all intents and purposes. He's just like sucking water out of, chambers or hallways and all this different stuff, while Torada and Valka and Elomas's crew are doing the sort of scientific work of investigating and mapping out what's going on here. And you could tell very quickly that he hates the fact that he's not as important as he wants to be.
Correct, yes.
They're having dinner, and Hadrian remarks that Elomas, even though that they're in this like temporary camp that has been erected pretty quickly, that it's luxurious for what you would expect for this kind of expedition. He travels in style. We finally get the answer to the question that I had, like, when we were looking at the two moons, right? Because this is a two-moon system. Bina, which is like the Kabbalistic understanding moon, and then there was one called Armand, where I couldn't find anything on that. Well, it turns out Armand was just the first Mataro, so they just named the moon after him. So a weird callback to a question that I had before, but we get a lot of world building sort of drip-fed by Elomas and his storytelling. He's got a cook who's from far away. Like, he's really, really well traveled. You can tell by the people that he keeps around him, by the way he's decorated the room. Like, the rugs he's got are super nice from elsewhere. Yeah. It might be Jadian, right? Or something like that.
Something. He feels like, like a person that's
Tavrosi carpets. Excuse me. Yeah. They're Tavrosi.
Yeah. Is he like at the end of his story arc where he's done, like, he's already had the series written about him and he's got all of the knickknacks to prove it. He's the post-adventure guy kind of seeking one final adventure or something. Yeah, essentially, yes.
Bilbo,
he's
and Lord
Bilbo
of the Rings.
post The Hobbit. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And as Bilbo is wont, he has his nephew traveling with him as well, Karthik, who, we had talked a little bit about Elomas and the fact that he's like tangentially related to the planetary, or like the continental governor where they were at Spring Deep before. And this is their kid, Karthik, who is not only Elomas's nephew, but his squire as well. And like you said, he's at the end of this arc. This is his retirement, essentially. He's no longer an adventurer. He is settled down. They eat together at table like this every night. And Karthik being, the squire, is like his cupbearer. And he's got servants that feed them food. Like, it's super nice. And at dinner, it is their custom to go over what they have learned that day, right? What they've taught, like, gone through, airing out any sort of possibility of learning about what they've previously done. So, like, science in this world is very difficult to do because people can't openly talk about things because they have to worry about the chantry, right? The Chantry controls all of that. This little small area and pocket is the most scientific that they can get without Volca going and traveling somewhere else to get a test done and then coming back, right? And we know that the Scholiasts in particular also have technology limited for them in particular as well. So them discussing and bringing up the ideas and what they've seen every single night is their sort of form of a group project, bringing things and getting other hypotheses and things like that. Despite the fact that Hadrian is frustrated that he can't be more involved in the scientific work and thinking that this is beneath him, he's still very gracious to the fact that Elamas is allowing him to be here and be a part of this whole situation. We also hear about dueling comes up. Elamas being the old man in the situation is trying to, shift the subject away from Hadrian being I'm just a glorified blah, blah, blah. And he's like, nonsense. You're such a good duelist. I was a duelist in my day. And uncle going on a story, right? He just tells a story at table. He tells a story about how this servant of a Mandari minister decided to challenge him to a duel because Elamas accused the minister of cloning himself to have sex with himself, which this Mandari guy apparently was the guy who created the best one-off homunculi ever or whatever. Mm-hmm. In this moment, drunk uncle is trying to sympathize with Hadrian, potentially still having feelings about killing Gilliam, but he just continues to go on, and it turns out the fact is that he wins in the duel because he's there. And it turns out the Mandari minister was doing exactly that later, which is kind of a funny little anecdote to give us more color to Elamas, if nothing else.
What I thought was so interesting about this story is Elamas sort of feels like prototypical knight guy almost to me. And he challenges this person. It seems like an honorable-ish duel or whatever. He kills this person and he sort of chased down and attempted to be killed in a similar position that Hadrian's in. Hadrian supposedly challenges Gilliam for at least on the outset, some sort of chivalrous challenge. Gilliam seems like a bad guy. He kills him and now he's sort of being pushed out and killed or trying to be killed and stuff. And it sort of spoke to me that, both of these people are trying to be honorable-ish and are being chased out for it, essentially. So it sort of begs the question about what are the consequences of honor in this universe. But also, it struck me as an interesting thing that early, chapter 1 of the one-ish of this book, we were told that the reason that there is dueling amongst the Palatine is to keep there from being these feuds and stuff like that. And, previously Hadrian's talking about this is a civilized legal thing that's supposed to do this. This sort of shows that it doesn't work. If you kill someone in the duel and then they immediately try to run after you and poison you, this sort of shows that the ethic fails, actually. And even though we have sanctioned dueling, it may just be more corpses for the sort of lethal, boring stuff between houses and knights and all this stuff. And so maybe Valka has a point that this is, even though it's sanctioned, it actually is not a good ethic.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that rereading it, but you're 100% right. It is a point in Valka's favor and a point against Hadrian earlier in the book when he said, it's less barbaric if we have this compared to all-out house war.
Maybe, yeah.
It's a good point. He makes a quick note about the fact that Elamas is having tea and Valka and Hadrian both despise tea. There's this beautiful line where he says, "This was just one of those biographical minutiae that made me feel subconsciously and stupidly that we were more similar than different." Hadrian and Valka are very, very different people. But there is this tendency among either people that you have a crush on, but also people that you're in a relationship with or whatever, that you find little things that you share. So my wife and I are very different, for instance. She's an introvert. I'm an extrovert. There's a huge host of differences between us. But these little biographical minutiae that he mentions here, I feel that so deeply because I feel that with my own life because we're so different, ways that we can be common other than just goals that we have in life and things like that. Or for instance, we both like pie more than we like cake. And so we had pie at our wedding. It's just this moment with the tea is the narrator, Hadrian, just being like, oh, I miss her. She's the best. I love her so much. We both hated tea. It's one of those things a common hatred or a common love that's really minor and not really saying anything about your personality is a beautiful way to show It's like a real thing in relationships. I'm sure you and your wife have some.
Yeah. Me and my wife are super different too. It's you sort of like need some basic foundational stuff. You need to have similar-ish values so you don't have irreconcilable differences and all that. But, you can have vastly different personalities, interests, and stuff than your partner. But what you do is that when you find those things that you do have shared interest in or shared meaning, and you sort of circle around them. So even if it's seemingly tiny, it's an opportunity to share with the person that you really care about. And so even though maybe pie isn't a part of our daily life, it's a sweet thing that you get to look back and think that you'll had this silly pie at your wedding instead of cake. Like that's a beautiful thing. That's a
biographical minutia.
Yeah, correct. And yet it's special, and it's a part of the thing that's meaning making for our relationships. So it's a great line. Good catch.
Karthik begins like removing the plates as they continue talking about the fact that like, the Mandari minister tried to poison Elamas. And he mentions that, the Chantry, they like using poisons too. So you better watch out, Hadrian, that kind of thing. Hadrian mentions that Karthik reminds him of his good Nima. I guess the narrator is returning to this, having met somebody named Nima, who is presumably a servant, because he's talking about the fact that Karthik is being so dutiful and clearing the plates and being such a good squire. But the fact, again, we have to put a pin in anybody that he mentions because we know that we'll meet them hopefully later in the story. So Hadrian then goes and changes the subject and asks how long they've been like doing work at Caliga. Valka says that we've been here since, those bad storms back, in 68 or whatever. So they've been here a few years. This is not the first time that they've done this.
Yeah.
Presumably it's a handful of times, if not more. I forget what the imperial standard year is, but they've been here for quite some time.
Yeah. I think they said 4 or something like that. 4 years or something.
4 years maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
These storms back in that year, 68, are the reason that Borisivo flickers on and off during storms. Like the grid has never been the same. So the castle and all the different stuff, that's the reason that it seems so volatile now compared to back then or whatever it may have been. Hadrian, at the mention of the fact that they've been here for so many years, for a few years at this point, and that people have been here for thousands of years, right? The Normans and then the Empire, right? Then the Solon Empire. The fact that he hasn't found, or anybody in their expedition has not found anything here. Tor Ada says like, it could be that like this has only been in imperial hands for a millennia, like the Normans could have taken all this different stuff, blah, blah, blah. Valka immediately jumps in and says, no, because she's seen other sites, right? Her hypothesis is this is like the other sites at Sad al-Sud, like the one on the Irktani planet, like where there's no sign of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And she says the quiet, like, hypothesis, she's proffering her hypothesis out loud and says they don't leave anything in their buildings or ruins. Ada mentions at the moment that, this is still a hypothesis. It's still very much disputed. To which Valka responds, if the Chantry had allowed you to do science, then maybe we could actually find out more information. But because, we have evidence that their religion is false or whatever, it's science, this information, they have to control it in order to keep their religion in power. That's what's stopping us from finding out more. Adam, they talk a little bit about what it's going to look like whenever they leave and all this different stuff, talking about why the Chantry even lets them do this. And it's basically because at the end of the day, they can't, there's nothing to take anything out, for instance, unless they find something. And if they find anything, the first thing the Chantry is going to do is take it from them, right? So the Chantry has a good idea what's going on here. They may not know the day-to-day, they may not hear the day-to-day conversations, but if anything leaves the site, they're going to be aware. And Ada sort of winks at Valka and says the only thing that she'll be able to leave with her are her memories. Because he mentions on the page that Valka smiled at that as though she and the other woman shared in some private joke. So again, the overwhelming evidence is that Valka has a way of memorizing or recording memory in a way that is superhuman.
Because we're reading closely. I completely did not notice this the first time.
It's the 5th or 6th time that we've seen it.
Correct. Yeah, yes. It's over and over.
We can confidently say that this has been noted before.
Yeah, it seems almost like interrupting this expedition would be more of a red flag than just allowing them to do this sort of fruitless expedition, not finding anything. It's probably just a wiser option for the Chantry to just let these people get stumped by this weird rock here and then just go upon their way rather than, than trying to prevent it.
Right. That makes a good point though, right? Like how there's nothing to see here. Back up.
Yeah,
there's nothing to see here.
They're doing anti-Streisand effect stuff by trying to act like there's nothing wrong, right? So
it's actually smart. It's really smart.
It's really smart, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So apparently we also find out that some Jadians are coming soon to visit the site. Elamas is telling us them for the first time. And then at the moment of the mention of Jadians, Elamas is like, Hadrian, you've got to go to the principalities, dude. They're the best. The Jadians are so cool. Again, a drunk uncle telling you a story about how he went to Japan the one time, which I'm sure that's going to be me. That's what he's doing here. And while Elamas is telling Hadrian about how great Jad is, and Hadrian is remarking, thinking about Jad and the principalities, Karthik comes back into the other room and he looks visibly spitted out. What's going on? I can read your face like a book. Tell me what's going on. The QET wave, the quantum entanglement wave, has just come in, and there's been a Cielcin attack at the edge of the Borosivo system.
I really like this paragraph here. I would like to read it. So it's all 5 of us maintained a grave silence. Years of rumors brought to Medua by merchants of chantry proclamations of legion reports relayed to Father's council. All of them converged in that single moment, falling like game tiles, and it all became real. This sort of gradual step that's occurred over the course of the book is sort of starting to culminate here. Early on, we have planets falling that are affecting the economy, and then that's super far away, and then we sort of gradually stepped up as Hadrian's trapped on Imesh. We commented on the fact that, we're like near the front now, and now we're having like Cielcin prisoners, and all of a sudden now we have like a battle. And so it's sort of slowly getting closer. And the theme of this book, of this sort of like impending, it's getting closer, is really starting to crash into our story now. We've had this simultaneous coming of age arc as the sort of comet starts to crash down, and it starts to feel like we're about to have impact now, because they're just saying like everything's kind of coming now. He's telling us that this is about to touch our story in a very real way. It's very close by now.
Finally, Hadrian feels like earlier it was like distant thunder. It's not like thunder is like right outside your house.
You can see the lightning. Yeah.
So we hear again some of the transmission and find out that Rain Smythe, who we've heard of a few times at this point, she was at the Ephebia and at the table when Hadrian had the Lygia incident. Her legion annihilated a Cielcin incursion force in the heliopause. Now, I had to look up what the word heliopause is. So the stars push out a great amount, like they have a great amount of influence beyond just their immediate thing, right? Depending on the size of the star, the gravity of the star, whatever. The heliopause is the distance at which a star does not have influence, right? So like the outermost edge of where a star has an influence is the heliopause. And so that's how far away from Imesh's star that is. Now, something we know about Imesh's star is it's old and it's red. So maybe that's closer than it would be for our star Sol, for instance, but it's still, we're dealing with space here. It's far, but close.
Yeah, close in a way that we were just not before. If we were still back home, this is not the same situation, but not even remotely.
Yeah. Hadrian, when hearing, like, basically this transmission is very much monitored. It's coming from the government. It's making sure that people don't freak out. Internally, Hadrian's like, I can see this, and this went through these particular logothetes who have very particularly written the script in such a way that people don't freak out. He mentions that these people are from the Ministry of Public Enlightenment, which sounds so 1984.
Yeah.
That I can't even begin to talk. He hears Baliamatara's voice proclaiming victory. He thinks of celebrations after this victory, right? Like they're going to have a parade in the streets and all this stuff. He can just picture it happening in Borosivo. And all he can see is the vision of Makisom getting its head cut off over and over again. Hadrian also remarks the fact that like this is really oddly chance that they even heard about this, because if the cook hadn't been listening to this channel and had been listening to something else, they would have never heard about it. I mean, like the planet itself wasn't attacked. There's no way for them to know without somebody telling them, isolated as they are on this one site, that they wouldn't have figured it out if the cook hadn't been listening to it himself. So even though it's very, very close, he's feeling that sort of tension between this is the closest that Cielcin ever been to attacking a place where I'm at, And at the same time, I never would have known this unless the cook had been listening to this individual channel at this one time or whatever. I want to read on page 452 a section where he begins by saying,
bottom of the page.
Strange the way the larger world casts its shadow on our own, our moments fleeting and small when measured against the roaring thrust of time. Beautiful. Beautiful way of describing that, and poignant in our current state of the world, to be honest. At this, though, Elamas tells everybody, he doesn't want to hear any more of this. Shut it off. Like, that's good. That's good enough. And then they just sit in quietude for the rest of dinner, and that's where the chapter ends. And we begin with chapter 65, I Dare Not Meet in Dreams. Hadrian, Valka, and Elamas are in the site, and Hadrian is asking, well, why do y'all keep going over these same chambers again and again and again? Again, he's still not, maybe he's asking this because he wants to be a fresh set of eyes. Maybe he's asking this because he just genuinely trying to understand. At the same time, he's still doing his odd jobs of like, oh, I'm picking up the gravitometer and bringing it over here. I'm sucking the water out of this chamber, that kind of stuff. Valka and Elamas, on the other hand, are making sure that everything is truly cataloged. You can imagine it's very difficult to do this in a place full of pitch black stone with limited light that feels like, in Elamas's estimation, that the chambers shift and move, right? So in order to confirm or deny that theory that Elamas has, maybe it's just him being drunk, they are making sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. Valka mentions that there are whole chambers that are sealed completely inside of the structure with no access to them, with no purpose or no way of us getting in there. And yet when they had scanned it with neutrino detectors, neutrinos are a subatomic ghost particle that they're using to be able to bounce into and figure out that there is chambers, she's wondering why. Like, this is an interesting thing that she can't figure out.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. She mentions it's as if these chambers were injected without touching the overall structure, or otherwise grew from the inside of the structure in some way. It's a super big mystery. These chambers exist. Can't find anything in there. Nobody can get in there. And Hadrian's asking the why questions while Valka is asking the how. That tells you a lot about who they are as people in general, right? Valka's way more interested in how and less on why. And Hadrian is way more interested in why and less on how. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that it can expand the question rapidly. Like, why would they have a room like that? And it's like, no, how would they even make a room like that? And then you start to ask bigger questions like, wait a second, okay, what are we even talking about here right now? Because if we don't even know how they made the room, how would you answer why? How, if we're talking about something so grand that it sort of expands exponentially as you think about it. Like there's these ruins that are all over the place with random sealed rooms that can't be accessed, and we don't know how they were made or for what purpose. It just gets more and more unexplainable.
Yeah, very. Elamas mentions that it's very easy to lose your way down here.
Yeah.
And they're sort of in either a hallway or the hub room that they've been at before, and they just look up at all of the markings and everything and just marvel at the fact that everything is so unexplainable. And how these markings, they can't read them. They have no Rosetta Stone, we've mentioned before. But what tales these walls might tell if only we could read them, right? Like this is there's an awe-inspiring thing that when you're in the middle of discovery and have not found the answer that just keeps driving you forward, you very much feel that from them in this moment. Valka mentions the fact that she's happy that the Chantry didn't just destroy this whole thing, to which Elamas, bringing up the point from the last chapter, it's if they destroyed it, then conspiracy theorists would just be fueled even more, right? That would be even more of a psyop for them to do. Valka says, I don't think the Chantry cares what anybody on Imesh thinks. And Elamas is like, hey, I live on Imesh. Hey, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
First of all, Elamas is great. He's such a good character. It's so fun. I'd love to get
reminds me of
Elamas.
Robin Williams playing Teddy Roosevelt in Night at the Museum, right? Like he's this kind of guy, right?
A little bit, yeah. He's great. He's a wonderful character.
Hadrian, again, asking why at every pause. Like, Hadrian's very much so an oldest child. I know I have it in me too. Why? Always asking why. He asked Elamas, well, why are you doing this, Elamas? And he's like, look around at this place, man. Yeah. It's amazing. It's mysterious. I like the mystery. And I'm old. I can better to have a mystery in my backyard than have to go 5 planets away or whatever,
I actually love that question in some sense. It's, there doesn't have to be an angle so much. It can just be like this is a wonderful, strange thing that deserves to be explored. And it seems like something that Hadrian should connect with in some sense, because he's got this sense of adventure and stuff like that. Elamas, he's like, some things are worth exploring, I love the purity of that.
Yeah.
It's not some grand mission. It's just awe and wonder.
Again, Hadrian kills the mood though by saying, you really think that the war's gonna make its way here to Imesh? And everybody just like, vibe is totally killed. But Volka does mention something interesting, that like this incursion at the edge of the space may have been the biggest thing that's happened with the Cielcin on Imesh, but it's not the first time Cielcin had been in system. She mentions that right after she arrived, there was a scout that had come in that they had stopped, which is ominous. If a scout, we're dealing with vastness of space, right?
Yeah.
A scout came in. We have this incursion at the edge of the system. We're escalating, right? Like even further. So that's another point on the data of like, oh, Hadrian, it being on Kaishen, to like, oh, it's outside of the system. We have another data point a few years back of like, that wasn't the first time that they've been here. Like they must know where this is. Maybe.
It's just weird that it's happening a lot. Yeah.
I wanted to read this portion on page 456. It may seem strange to say, after all, I had been in the place for weeks, had stood in that very room many times, but still I could not take it all in. I felt the presence of unknown architects like an oppressive weight. How small I was, and how young. I felt like an idiot child measured against the majesty and antiquity of those black halls. Those halls that had been old when man was merely a beast. What had they been like, these these ancient builders and gods? Had they been mightier than we, a great power bestriding our universe, rolling over the stars in the fire of their youth? Or perhaps they were only early and not great at all. They had colonized far fewer worlds than we, it seemed, and terraformed none. Well, there's Hadrian. It's answered his own question on why Elamas is doing this too, right? He didn't even need to ask it. He feels the same way just being in this chamber of like, everybody's got to feel some type of way looking up at the ceiling and not understanding a thing.
Yeah, it's this expression of awe, but also the juxtaposition of like that awe versus our own sort of like smallness that's sort of created by I think I said this in a previous chapter as we started to talk about Kalagaz. This is a very kind of tropey thing with kind of cosmic horror stuff of stumbling across something that's like just like a lot older than us, that sort of starts to beg all these questions as to how we fit into the picture of this thing that seems old and massive and not comprehensible. And so in the face of that, Hadrian is starting to ask himself those questions, and it will be good to know moving forward, like what kind of relationship he's going to start having with this place and the questions he asks and how he grapples with those. I think part of the point of why something like Kalaga exists in the story is just to prime Hadrian to ask these questions to himself and to the audience. So it'll be good to keep it in mind moving forward as we go through Kalaga.
As he is stewing on these thoughts, he feels a breeze at the back of his neck and turns around and decides at that moment to leave the chamber that Volk and Elamas are in and goes through goes through the doorway down this hallway. He finds another door and a hallway that he hasn't visited before, which is strange because he's presumably been in that other chamber many, many times. But earlier in the chapter, we know that Elamas said, everything's so pitch black and you have very little light. It's got to be really, really easy to get lost in this place. So he finds this hallway that he knows that he hasn't been before because it's different. He goes down this tube, which is sort of covered in the circular anaglyphs around it. And he's like, hey guys, I'm going down this hallway, like trying to let them know that it's sort of cave diving or like you let people in on your expedition know if you can that, where you're going or what you're doing or whatever. But then at the same time, he's so anxious to keep going because it's a new thing that he barely waits for any response and he just continues on. He pulls out a lantern out of his pocket and he throws it forward. It just clatters on the ground. And he uses it to essentially scout out what's on the floor because it's so dark. This chamber, he's never been in and presumably nobody else has because nothing is lit, right? The only thing lighting it is this light that Hadrian has pulled out. And so he throws it forward and he tiptoes his way to pick it up and he throws it forward. He does that a few times. And he after 6 full times, he turns around, start going back. He keeps doing this this is going on for a bit. Maybe I should just start making my way back. And as he begins turning around and turning back, on his side is a crack in the wall that is large enough for him to go in, and he wouldn't have seen it had his light not just shined on this at the exact right time. He's shocked he didn't see this the first time that he passed by it, because again, he's backtracking to leave the current place that he's in. He's wondering, like, how did he miss it? Like, this is too big for me to have missed before.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
But crack in the wall and place that he's never visited before, of course he's going to go in, and he starts crawling and creeping towards it. Crack at all but a passage. And inside of it, the walls are smooth and glassy, and there are no anaglyphs. So that he came from a tube that had a bunch of anaglyphs, and he goes into this other hallway where the walls are different and there's nothing on them. And not only that, we heard in the last chapter, or in the last episode, excuse me, that light reflected off of these walls in this sort of rainbowish kaleidoscopy hue. The light reflecting off of this wall isn't that rainbow, but it's pure white, which is different than anything else that they've seen up to this point. As Hadrian is moving through it, he can't help but feel like this passage had to be intentional, like somebody had to have built it this precise way. Like he sees like a chamber is beyond him and steps as he like continues to like do this light thing and keep throwing it or whatever. And not only that, when he sees the chamber and these steps, it's the first time that he's seen in the weeks that he's been here, and presumably the amount of time that Valka has spent showing him, you know, different bits and pieces of the whole thing. The only steps that exist in this place are in this chamber and outside. Like there's not another single room that they know about that has steps inside of the structure, which is really odd. So obviously he continues to go through and he looks around and he shines the light above himself, but there's no reflection. And it's so dark, he can't tell how high the ceiling is. And so he throws his glow sphere up and it sails upward in this, what he calls a trapezoidal room, which I can't even fathom a room that's
trapezoidal.
Like he picked Rockio picked the most geographically obtuse one for us to understand. The glow sphere doesn't come back. Like it keeps going up. Like it just never stops. He looks up at this dais and like the steps and where they lead, and this dais, this like sort of elevated portion of the room the steps lead to, behind it is this huge mural, this gigantic mural. At that moment, the glow sphere falls down and is dead. Like it's just out of light. And so presumably like he's got very little light now. Maybe he's got a personal flashlight or something, but now it's super, super dark in here. And he calls out for Valka and Elomas again. It's like, hey, have you guys been down here? Have you seen this? And again, he's really way casual about this.
Yeah.
Because he's like, they must have, right? They've been here for 4 years. That had to have been in this room before. So he shines his flashlight on the wall and he starts looking at this 50-foot tall glyph. And I wanted to read it on page 458. It was a circle like the others and yet unlike them, for where the rest of the glyphs carved in that black stone were each a part of some cluster or a network of many symbols, this one stood alone. Within it was carved not the shapes of line and lesser circles, but a knot of 3 triangles interlinked. The outer circle was plain and smooth, perfectly regular. I moved toward it. For a brief moment, I thought I heard footsteps, thought Valka and Elomas had come looking for me. But when I turned back and called for them, I saw no one. The light reflected from my hand lamp seemed to shine from the black stone as if cast by its own reflection. I mounted the 3 steps to the dais beneath that mighty sigil, hand outstretched to touch the smoothly polished stone. With my fingers, I traced the bottommost lip of the great circle. Almost I felt I stood beside the mason who had carved that ancient rune. So crisp and seeming new was that carving. It struck me then that the whole chamber was dry and untouched by the waters of the flooding sea. That should not have been possible, as deep as it was in the tunnels. Super strange, right? Already there's stuff that is strange here. He sees this mural. There's no other murals in this place. This room is dry, but there's just been monsoon season for the better part of like 6 months or whatever. that should be flooding this entire place, where it's like hot and humid on the outside. His breath is misting in this air, so it's chilly or cold. That he mentions that he let out a breath and it misted the air, turned white as temple smoke. He thinks about leaving, and yet he's having this moment. There's this weirdness in the room, but he sees something out of the corner of his eye that he can't place, because he turns and nothing is there and he can't find it. And like, also he can't find his reflection. Maybe it's his reflection. He doesn't know. So he reaches out to touch the stone again. And the same feeling he had on the outside of the structure where he touched the stone and it shocked him straight to his heart, it's that times 10. He cannot move in this moment as his hand is sort of locked into the thing. And he sees his reflection and his hand locked in the same place. And then his reflection begins moving while he cannot. And his reflection stares back at him with deep, luminous green eyes. It places its hand on the rock like as if it's a prison situation, where as if this rock was a pane of glass between them. And Hadrian immediately feels pain lancing up his arm.
It says that it crucified him in my version. Does it say that in yours?
Oh yeah, wait, where?
Such a specific word. Then the cold took me, bright and piercing as it had been the first afternoon on the steps outside, as if someone had driven a spike of the clearest ice through my arm and crucified me.
It says, clearest ice through my palm and nailed me to the wall.
Interesting.
So he removed crucified and put nailed to the wall. In this situation. Okay. He begins slumping towards the wall in this moment because it's painful, but he can't move his hand for some reason. And he swears that it almost feels as if his reflection's hand is grabbing his hand on this side of the wall. And I wanted to read this section on 459 because it is absolutely insane.
Correct.
Those eyes, those terrible green eyes staring at me out of my own face. Was it my own face? I could see nothing but those eyes. They filled the universe, became the universe, and behind them and through them I beheld countless suns. They scattered like embers and blew out, all but one. It was toward that one I fell, tumbled through the endless dark to a city that sheltered beneath the shadow of a great black wall, a wall to shame the greatest of mountains. It was a city whose spires and bell towers recalled the castle of my home, though all its buildings were strange. Somewhere echoing through the streets, I heard the wailing of an infant, and at once I found myself standing beneath the crumbling vaults of some vast and ancient chapel. Before me, beneath the rotunda where the night sky shone through the broken dome, there stood a rocking cradle. Step by cautious step, I drew nearer, advancing as though it were a lion. I approached, sensing whatever was in the bassinet was a thing of terror and majesty that I dared not look upon, but had to see. I peered inside. The cradle held nothing but air. The dream crumbled, pillars and pews and broken ceiling falling all around me. I fell with it all, plunging back through an abyss. What the actual hell is going on here? What does any of that mean? Like, there is so much here that is just incomprehensible. He sees countless suns, all of which are scattered and then all blow out.
Yeah.
Except for one. And he like gets tumbling toward that one and then is in this weird city that reminds him of Delos, reminds him of Maidwa.
Again, this is cosmic horror-ish imagery. This is the craziest dream, weird, vision-y stuff that's in this book, I think. It's wild. It's unbelievable. Obviously, this is a lot of cryptic stuff that we're going to have to decode as the story continues, but each of the elements of this section represent something important, clearly. It all feels intentional. There's symbolism going on where there's a cradle. Wait, what does that even mean?
An empty cradle, but he heard a cry, like...
Yeah, there's just so many things that are going on, so much ominous stuff for the record, and it's not neutral. It feels like something is wrong or something really serious is going on. It feels like there's something about like suns going out that feels like apocalyptic of something. It just imagery of some horrible thing is about to happen, whether that is the destiny with the sun eating or what. It's hard to know, but we know something is looming. At the very least, something's being prophesized here is what it feels like.
And that's not where the prophecy ends. That's just the first part of it.
Correct. Yes.
I wish I could read this all to you. This is my favorite chapter in this book. I'm going to be totally honest to anybody listening, go read this chapter over again, especially if you read this book before.
Read the new version, people.
Read the new version.
Read the new version, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit more about the second half of this vision. I don't want to read it all because I think people should go back and read it for themselves. He mentions that he sees this ship that looks like a cathedral covered in Gothic columns and all this different stuff. And he sees the Cielcin are arrayed against this ship. And he sees one Cielcin that is mightier than all of the Cielcin than the rest. He is this mighty Cielcin is covered in black armor that is inlaid with silver, that it has silver rings on its horned crown, and that there's this pale veiled figure in the shadow of this Cielcin. And then he sees light. Again, light, period. Sentence. The best sentence in any of these books. Right?
Light period.
Every time that we see light period, massive, massive pin.
We got to put that on a coffee cup. Light period.
Light period. Yes.
Love it. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. He should totally make that.
I know. We got to do that.
Then he mentions that he's blinded by the light in this situation, which to me, it's pretty clear that the light in this situation is the portended light that we've heard about at the very beginning of the book.
It's got to be, yes. Yeah.
I was blinded, and in my blindness I sensed a presence. Shapes moved invisibly, casting no shadows. 1, 2, 3, then 1 again. I had tried to cry out, but the words would not come, for I had forgotten them. I had forgotten everything but that light. I felt nothing, saw nothing, heard nothing, knew nothing. Nothing save 3 words. This must be. At that moment, he falls back from the dais. He's no longer pinned to the wall, but he's obviously shaken in this moment.
We have to talk about this must be, because this is crazy for obvious reasons. So the vibe I immediately got from reading this the first time is there is cryptic prophecy-ish imagery here that's going to relate to what's going to happen in Hadrian's life. It's going to be bad. And the vibe I get from this must be is some force telling us this terrible purpose has to happen. That's the imagery plus this demand or calling. It's unclear at this point if this is something that needs to happen that Hadrian has to opt into, or if it's going to happen if he doesn't, even if he doesn't want it to. There's just some sort of terrible purpose vibe that I get from this must be, that this feels like the thing that launches us into the rest of the series. So far we've had Hadrian deconstruction and the war getting closer, and this feels like we have just crossed the threshold into the rest of the universe of the story, is what this section feels like. It's probably the single most important passage that we've read so far, maybe other than the first page of the book. But this is just taking our character that's been developing and then launching him into what would the first page of this book end up being. So this is a huge promise for us as the audience. What do you think about this must be?
I wanted to ask a question about the literary aspects of this in particular.
Yes.
Do you think this works better because of chapter 1, page 1? Like, if you if you just started with Hadrian on Delos and didn't give any background about he was going to destroy the sun, and we didn't have any drip-fed Gadadin stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you think this works just as well, or does it work especially well because we have had throughout consistently in the subtext of a lot of these chapters, this imagery?
It works best because of the narrative and the framed narrative style that he's chosen, and the drip fed style he has had for this book, because the sort of satisfaction that you get from knowing the super zoomed out version and then slowly getting more details is incredibly satisfying for me as a reader. I think a lot of other people feel the same way, because at first you're like, okay, we're going to have a war with the Cielcin probably in this series or something, because he's going to end it. Okay, we're learning who Hadrian is over the course of the story. What does this war look like? Okay, the Cielcin eat people. This is kind of what they look like. This is what they sound like. And then you get this section and you're like, yo, what is the ship, the cathedral ship? What's the pale thing? What's the Cielcin that's greater than the rest? What is all this? The question marks propel the story forward, especially in book 1, in my view. And it's been the style this whole time to just give us just enough to want to know more, but not giving the whole thing out to just take the wind out of the sails of the story. I personally just love it. It's my favorite theme of this book, and it was my favorite thing the first time around, is the looming thing that is eventually gonna be here, the question marks that just keep making us read to want to know more about this world as we get to like sort of independently ask more questions as he slowly gives us just enough to want to know more, but not giving the whole game away. It's amazing. I love it. And I don't think the story works as well without it. You know, some people think that like, oh, you do the frame narrative thing, and then like I have all these assumptions about how the story goes because you did that, and I'm like, it just works so good. It's so good. Mm-hmm. And I wish more people would appreciate it for what it is, because I think your catch is correct. This prophecy imagery works best in an environment where you have expectation for the future. This gives us some details that maybe we'll get to gradually fill in of that future for the rest of the story. It's a hyped moment. It's great. It's the coolest. It's awesome.
I'm starting to see people reread, having read Shadows Upon Time and finished the series. I'm starting to see a lot of booktubers and bookstagrammers and book talkers reread the series, and they're like, holy crap, this book is so good, dude.
Yeah, dude. I think this section in the revised version and your text that you're reading from, anyone that has read the series, this section is mandatory reading. Like you have to, just as folks that are reading it for the second time, you have to come back and read this. You know, like if this is going to be our prophecy or something like that, come back and see if it worked out. Who knows?
So as he's like falling back from the dais and feeling super cold, he like, Vodka! Like screams out. You know, he is trying to get out of this situation. You can picture him like running back almost. He's had this really harrowing moment. Just being as safe as he can, he's making his way back. And as he gets out into the area that he was there with them for, he can't hear them. Like he moves his way back to the hub room. They're not there. He checks a bunch of chambers. He's yelling for them. He can't find them. After spending an extraordinary amount of time out looking for them, he decides, okay, I guess maybe they just left and went outside. He mentions that it's sunny when he's coming out there. Volka storms up to him immediately. It's like, where the hell have you been? And then punches him, saying like, Elamas is going to get a search and rescue team. We thought you fell down a shaft and broke your neck. If the Count knew that you had died or whatever, we would be in so much trouble. Like this would have been like, you know,
huge
so
problem.
Bad for us. Huge problem for the whole expedition, whatever. And Hadrian's like, whoa, wait a minute. I was gone for 20 minutes. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Like, hold up.
Calm down.
I called for you. Like, chill out. What's the big deal? And she's shaken. She's like shocked at him saying this. And she looks at him and says, Hadrian, it's been 6 hours since I saw you last.
Yeah, what on earth, right?
Every time that there's weird time-related stuff going on here, have you ever seen ReZero?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay. Everybody should go watch it. There's really weird stuff that happens in the show, and there's a really weird sound effect. Every time I hear Hadrian and weird time stuff going on, I picture that sound effect in my head, and it just is awesome. Everybody should go watch the show.
What's so interesting about this is that, you know, if someone's in cryo or something or whatever, they're in fugue, at least we have like some sort of explanation that makes sense. This is super weird, right? Because he just goes in here, touches a thing, has a vision, and then comes back. And 6 hours is a dramatically long, like you cannot accidentally pass 6 hours in a room by yourself, right? It's just not possible. So we just have no concept of what this could possibly mean. You know, like, does he jump forward in time? Does the world go forward in time? Is he sitting there stuck to the wall for 6 hours? We just don't know. We have no idea. Disorienting, to say the least.
Did he fall asleep and wake up? Like, there's a bunch of different other implications.
What happens?
So he is shocked to hear that it's been 6 hours, but he doesn't dispute it. And he just like starts sputtering of like trying to explain, well, there was this room off the tunnel. And you know, trying to like picture and piece together where he has been. And Volka's like, there's no room off of the tunnel with the anaglyphs in it. There's no branching on that side at all. And Hadrian's like, no, there really, really is. At the same time, he's also not telling her his vision because he doesn't know how to feel about it. And he doesn't know how she'll react to it. And so he is like, he's thinking about it. It's like, they must have walked like right past him. Like, how could they have missed the crack in the wall that I saw? Because I missed it and then I came back and I saw it. There's no way they could have missed it, right? And then, of course, Hadrian in love is like, I wonder if she's worried about me while I was gone. And then he has this ethical quandary of like, well, okay, I want to tell her about the vision, but I don't want to tell her about the vision because I don't know how she'll respond. But I don't want to lie to her because that's not ethically good. And I don't even know if this vision was even real. And so while he's like pondering this, they make their way back into Caligot and go towards that hallway with the anaglyphs. And the crack is nowhere to be found. Hadrian is swearing 6 ways to Sunday that it was there. Like, I swear I'm not lying. Like, I'm not making this up. I promise. And Valka, surprisingly, like, cocks her head and does not believe that he's lying. Like, something in Hadrian's sincerity is coming out to her and she's believing it, at least immediately.
Yeah. At least thus far.
He then starts describing the room. And then, like, in light of this information, is like, maybe Elomas is right. Maybe the walls do shift. Like, maybe the shifting walls and rooms is like a real thing, because like there was a passageway here that I went through. He describes that when he touched the wall, he had the same feeling as when he touched the stone outside. And then the moment he mentions that cold feeling, he just can't stop, and it all erupts out of him. Just him tells her the entirety of the vision, front to back, soup to nuts, with all of its weirdness, and then just stops, right? Finishes. And she is silent. She's not mad. She doesn't say anything for quite some time. And she looks at him and calls him unbelievable, to which he's like, what does that mean? And then she's immediately pissed and is like, you know, even though I let you come on this trip and join us here at Caligot, how dare you lie to me? If you just got lost, just admit you got lost and don't posture. This isn't even a good lie. Like, it's so unbelievable to her that she immediately puts him in this camp of like, this kid wants to look better to me, so he came up with such a fantastical story. But it's so fantastical that it's not even good. Like, come up with something even more believable.
Yeah. I was so mad when I first read this. It got me fuming. There's just something about like the idea of going through an experience like this, and then like, you know, having this connection with this person, and then just being vulnerable and sharing it with them, and then them not believing it. Just like, it feels so hurtful, you know, given their relationship. She knows that he's not like this, you know, superstitious like barbarian guy, but she like really treats him that way here. It really sucks, really bad. And
but she does believe that about him, right? She basically says it.
Yeah, but like, you know, it kind of leans in like, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? There's like a moment where it's like, yeah, you're different a little bit or something like that. And like it peeks through, but then like, you know, he's fighting this, like this preconceived notion she has all the time. And as soon as he barely slips out of it, she can very quickly snap back into that. And I think that this just crosses too many lines. Like, she just can't believe it. It crosses too many barriers for her worldview to even accept like something like this could have happened. And I'm not saying I would behave any differently necessarily if someone told me that they had a vision of all the suns going out, and then like I understand where she's coming from, but it just sitting in Hadrian's shoes and it being truly real to him, and then feeling that it's got to feel like a betrayal. You know,
and having the rapport of having this big, great secret that the Chantry can't even know about, right? Like,
yeah,
they've established so much rapport at this point. For her not to believe him stabs him pretty good.
Yeah, it's understandable, but unfortunate.
He tries to challenge her, saying like, why would I lie? Like, why would I lie to you? Like, you've seen me at pretty low points. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, maybe you're just bored of, you know, roughing it out here with us and not having fancy wine and your houris, which are like heavenly beings in Islam, but maybe referring to Anais, maybe you're not like us normal people, us scientists, you're tired of hanging out with us. You want to go back to all your houris at the palace and drink your fancy wine. And he's like, wait a minute, like, you know so much about me. I fought a duel to the death over what I thought was your honor. You think I'm just like womanizing? Like, come on. Like,
yeah,
that's not me, and you know it. And then he swears again, I'm not lying or whatever. And then she just says, fine, and then walks away and starts calling him a barbarian on her breath. And that's where the chapter ends. What a whirlwind of a chapter. So
good, though. I love the image. I could read that section over and over again. You know, I told you before we started recording that I'm reading Revelations. It feels very like Revelations-y, like with all of the imagery and prophecy and It's beautifully written. And if we were in Tolkien's universe, you could almost see a similar thing where like you see images of, the black figure with the ring and the orcs and the thing. It's just awesome, wonderful imagery. It's so well written. Again, very cosmic-y, cosmic horror-y, seeing the end of something or whatever in the future. So probably my favorite section of the book so far, actually. It's just a really cool chapter.
But we end that there and begin our final chapter of this episode, The Satrap and the Swordmaster. So finally, the Jadians that were mentioned 2 chapters ago show up at Calaga. One is a satrap, which is a planetary governor in the principalities subordinate to one of the regional princes. And in Jad, they have many princes and then a high prince above all of the princes. In our world, satrap is a reference to a provincial governor in the Persian Empire. In this case, this satrap is a woman whose name is Lady Kalima. And looking at her, Hadrian is like, now I understand what they're talking. He's heard rumors. He's never met anybody from Jad other than the 2 plebeian equivalents or patrician equivalents that he met, Dimitri and whatever, but he's never met the Elealakran of Jad, which are the Palatine equivalent or maybe even greater. But he is standing before him right now is one of these people, actually 2. But the one that he is shocked by is Lady Kalima, the satrap, who is nearly 7 feet tall.
He said she's got like almost like copper skin. Like she sounds like almost like a Greek goddess or something like that. Like it just sounds so fantastical. Yeah.
She is the personification of Jadian genetic purity. And so he mentions the fact that like the Elealakran, which is the ruling caste in Jad, we do eugenics in the Empire. They do eugenics way different over there. Like they are huge on it, apparently. And that every single one of these people in this caste, which is, I guess, the Palatine equivalent or like super Palatine or peerage or whatever you want to call it, are practically superhumans, is what he calls them. She's covered in silks and gold, and she's surrounded by these Mamluks, which are a reference of like slave soldiers in the Caucasians and the Turks, like during the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and stuff like that. These slave soldiers, many of whom convert to Islam. Like that's where the reference of Mamluk comes from. But in this universe, these Mamluks are slave clone soldiers. So like imagine genetically superior Clone Wars-esque, like all of them are clones of each other and around this one woman as she's walking up to them. And who is behind this 7 foot tall, goddess? Anais Mataro, who immediately smiles at Hadrian. Hadrian's like, oh, and smiles back at her, faking it as he is like still super sad that his crush doesn't believe his fairy story.
I was furious to see Anais, if I'm honest.
Oh, really? Yeah. Especially this is the first time they're seeing each other now that we know.
Yes. Right.
What the purpose of the whole situation is.
Right. It just makes you feel gross. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, just wait.
Yeah.
So the satrap in this moment, she doesn't speak, but the man at her side does, who is the sword master from the name of the chapter, who has smiling eyes. He's wearing this traditional garment of the Maiskaloi, which are the sword masters, these crazy swordsmen that we've heard a little bit about. And that traditional robe is a half robe called a mandias, which is cinched at the waist. One is a flowing sleeve worn over the left shoulder, and the other one is just like free-handed or whatever. So you can sort of picture like Jedi robes, but more colorful, and only on one side, one hand is free, and this other one is sort of flowing. I get kind of a Matador-esque kind of vibe with it, also mixed with some...
It's like a Jedi, samurai, Persia. It's like a weird, like, yeah, it's sick.
Awesome.
It's just so cool. It's great. It's just awesome. Jad's awesome.
The swordmaster looks and asks Elomas if he is the knight, this Redgrave that'll be their guide. And Elomas says, yes, of course. And then, what is your name, sir? And he says, Aloran. Now, fun fact, I bet this is true. This one seems pretty down pat. Aloran potentially is a reference to Gandalf's original name in Valinor, which is the Undying Lands, derived from the Quenya word for dreams. The word in Quenya for dreams is where Aloran comes from. I'm almost 100% sure that's where the name Aloran comes from, is Gandalf. Deep lore.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
Hadrian remarks that the fact that like this swordsmaster spoke first is strange.
It's like out of turn, right?
It's out of turn. It's totally out of turn. He notes it in his like, this is fishy. Immediately after Aloran speaks up, Lady Kalima says, "Forgive my servant. You know, he's not used to being quiet." To which Aloran then smiles. Hadrian kind of laments the fact that at this moment, this satrap that he was expecting a man or whatever, because he really wanted to see these masks that he's heard about. We've heard a little bit about them too.
Yeah.
On Jad, they whereas like Palatines, they have to hide behind, social things. The male princes and high lords of Jad wear physical masks that articulate themselves, and he is not upset, but disappointed that he doesn't necessarily get to see that in this moment, because apparently sword masters and women's do not wear them, he learns. Kalima then is like, "I heard that we are to see these caves. They seem to be a wonder of this world, according to Bailey Mataro." You could tell that like she's unimpressed with everything. The ground she walks on isn't fit for her to like step on it. Like this is the kind of vibe that we're getting from her.
So she doesn't want to be here.
Well, yeah, I think she might want to be here. She's wanting.
It just feels that way. It's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably true. It feels like she is wanting to be impressed, right? Like she very much wants to be impressed.
Yeah, maybe that's right. And she's not impressed yet.
Has not been impressed with anything on Imesh yet. Hadrian calls her a sybarite, which means a person who is devoted to self-indulgence, luxury, and pleasure. And so maybe the fact that like she's so unimpressed, she seems that off-put because she's expecting the ability to like something novel or whatever. He also mentions that, hey, I mean, I don't blame her. Borisivo can't compare to Jad in terms of its splendor. And then he does all this world building about Jad. So we don't know if he ends up ever going there or if he just sees it or hears about it from other people or whatever, or from Elamas for that matter. But in spite of all her, turned up nose in this situation, Elamas is jovial as ever, drunk uncle. And it's like, oh yeah, so it's okay. Totally cool. Yeah, let's go. Here, Lady Kalima, follow me. I'll lead you. I'll give you a personal tour of Kalaga myself. Are you sure you don't want to hang out for wine? Like I've got plenty of good wine, all this. Yeah. He's being very, very polite.
Yeah.
And she's like, nope, we're only here for 3 hours and then we got to head back. And so everybody begins processing towards the ruins of Kalaga. So like this is like them going to the zoo, right? Kind of situation.
Yeah.
Anais walks next to Hadrian and immediately opens the conversation with him saying like, hey, I hear we're going to get married soon. Like just immediately jumping headfirst into the situation. Yeah.
At some level, I appreciate just saying it out loud rather than, it would almost be worse to not mention it, but it still just feels, the whole situation feels gross. So it's a bunch of bad options, honestly, but at least there's no pretending.
Right.
Yeah.
He's stuck.
Yeah.
He is polite in this situation, but he also deflects saying, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. But you've got to have your ephebia first. And that's not at least for a few years. And like, he's like, very clearly trying to say, yeah, it's great. But also, no, like we still have some time and I'm kind of happy about that. He makes a note on the page that this must be how Kyra felt with his advances, which is weird, really full circle.
Yeah, I appreciate the full circle nature of this. It also just feels like, his relationship with Kyra in some sense was really kind of defining, that experience, this sort of shame and guilty experience as a result of it. And then that combined with this experience, those kind of early life experiences it's like sort of value shaping. And it will be interesting to see how this experience and his previous experience with Kyra like carry forward in the narrative, to see if this offers sort of a long-standing value thing for Hadrian. We have other commentary about his sexual ethic with not wanting to participate in some of the stuff in this world, but it's great that the author points this out to us and reminds us like we're in a similar situation here where consent gets very weird with roles and power and people being forced into things. It's very interesting, putting Hadrian in the precise position that he was in the reverse position of it earlier in the narrative.
Anais doesn't make any note of Hadrian's feelings in the situation and asks like, oh, when are you going to come back to Borisivo? Like you should really come back with us. Like Lygia can't do anything to you. She wouldn't dare to do it. And then like whispers in his ear, I'd have her killed if she did.
Okay. First of all, at this point, Anais is like out for me, right? Like before, because the thing is, like, this feels so schemy and weird and like pushy. It's even past where we were before, where like there was like a weird subtext, like something was going on, but like this feels so. The comeback thing just feels. It feels like she has no respect for even his livelihood. Like he could like if her father decided, yeah, this is dangerous enough for him to be away, the idea that she would want him back feels not only selfish but also just foolish. Like it seems like it's not even just that she's, at least if she were smart and strategical, this would feel better. But this just feels like she wants to crash him straight into the ground because she feels this way. It's so self-destructive, right? It rubs me the wrong way.
He kind of deflects and says, I'll be there soon enough. Like it's okay. Like, whenever your dad says it's safe for me to come back to you.
Yeah.
And then he sort of like changes the subject of the conversation by saying, what do you think about the Maesclos? Because both of them, even though they're talking, are staring at the Swordmaster from the back. I think the equivalent would be like if we saw like a high level UFC fighter or like something like that in public, or like a Navy SEAL that was a Navy SEAL that was famous, or I don't know, some kind of war. It's kind of, prize fighter probably is the number one thing. Some sort of badass, right? You see some sort of badass out in public that you've heard like, oh, these, I've SEAL Team 6 guy or whatever, right? Like kind of all of the above.
It would probably be more the equivalent of like being like almost like a peasant's the wrong word, but in like medieval Europe, in like a knight in full armor is like walking, you're like, whoa, like, cause it almost feels like a UFC fighter doesn't even capture the insanity of what these people are apparently capable of. Like it's like looking at a legend in front of you, like on like a galactic scale. It literally is
Muhammad
like
Ali in his prime. That kind of
Mike
Tyson in his prime,
but can fight 100 boxers at the same time. It's like, it's crazy, right? It's just the legend is bigger than the man itself that's standing in front of them.
I do want to make a note that Hadrian's internal monologue here is like, it's like, maybe she thinks I'm jealous. Wait, am I actually jealous? Oh God, why am I jealous? It's awesome. It's really funny because like that's really believable too. Of like, I'm not really interested in you, but you being interested in somebody else. I don't like that, right? Like, or whatever. Like, it's kind of funny. He gives us some world building on the fire school on Jad, of which only the Yaoli Holocron are chosen. So like the highest of the high purity and genetics, who are trained for nearly a century, right? When you have timetables as long as the Palatine do, right? You're training these they are sword masters, right? This is way beyond 10,000 hours. This is multiple lifetimes worth of training to get these people good with swords. And
at a superhuman level. At a superhuman level.
Already having superhuman abilities.
Yeah. It's completely incomparable to anything we can achieve. And even if we had the lifespan, I mean, it's impossible to quantify, really.
Like you mentioned, one Maesclos is said to be able to take on 100 legionnaires and survive. He also mentions this on the page. Much later, I would see one defeat 3 of the Emperor's Martian Guard without drawing her blade. So one, we get a lot of things there. One, we find out that Maesclos not only men, like there can be Maesclos women in this situation. Number 2, this might be the first time we've heard of the Martian Guard, but if they're the Emperor's Martian Guard, presumably they're some of the best guards in all of the Empire if they're guarding the Emperor's body.
And also, why are they fighting? Like, why are they fighting a Maesclos? Right. What does that mean?
Yeah,
so there's so much in that one sentence. It's wild.
Because aren't Jad and the Empire kind of allies in this situation? Why are they fighting the Martian Guard? And not only that, this woman defeats 3 of the Emperor's Martian Guards without drawing her high matter blade. Like, so that's how badass these people are.
Yeah.
Super, super cool.
John Wicks of space, right? I mean, yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Anais, they stopped talking about the Maesclos thing, and she's like, come on, come back with me, please.
So pushy.
Having space on this. Like really, really pushy.
Yeah, terrible.
And Hadrian's like, no, I really can't. And internally, he's like, I feel like a piece of meat. I feel like an animal that is being used. And again, trying to deflect, he says, it's good that the Jadians showed up when they did, right? Like at that moment, she, kind of turned sour and was like, the war is way closer. Like she goes somber for a moment thinking about the war. Maybe it's his advances too, but she gets notably dark when he mentions that they've come. Apparently the planetary defense force is expecting another attack, and this has affected her so much that Hadrian in the moment looks at her and is like actually genuinely asking, hey, wait, are you okay? Is everything okay? Which is strange that he would, be as empathetic as he is, despite the fact he knows that she has all the power in the situation.
Yeah.
She mentions to him that, like, even for her, she felt like the war would never have gotten nearly as close as it has. But when it's at the edge of your system and your dad runs everything, it's very real to her. It's very, very real to her.
I like that she's shown to be anxious here because it gives us a weight of the appreciation, because when we hear about the battle that just occurred near system, I didn't, for some reason, I didn't feel the weight of it truly before in the previous scene. Hadrian feels the weight and, the people in the room feel the weight. Her feeling the weight of it feels like, like the person who's related to the actual leadership of this planet. It feels like the anxiety is like her planet could fall. Like it's not just, like the war is coming, but it feels like there's a real fear that like if the Cielcin actually arrived, it's like doomsday for them and the planet. I don't know why I read that much into my experience of her saying that, but it feels like that's what we're talking about here. It isn't just like a regular war. There's like,
it's existential.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's the experience that I have reading it.
And it's sort of ruining her plans, right? Her plan is she's going to have her Ephebia, get married to Hadrian, then she's going to be the leader of this planet, and she's going to have kids, and then all of her kids are going to be part of the peerage, right? It's the Cielcin wrench getting thrown in here really screws up a lot for her. And, despite Hadrian's better judgment, he is kind to her in this moment and like doesn't pull his hand away and like immediately leave her out in the cold, like despite the fact that he does still feel like a piece of meat.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Jadians are looking at Kalaga and are like, whoa, this is crazy. Oh my God, what are we seeing? Almost like basically one of the Jadians, I believe it's Aloran, says this statement that sounds like a religious statement, Dola Deu Dufoti, which is the first time that we've heard anything religiously implicated that isn't chantry related. Come from somebody. It's either been pure materialism or it's been, I guess, hedonism and then chantry stuff. And then now we're hearing another religious thing that Hadrian has some insight into. Meanwhile, he takes a look at one of the Mamluks and like thinks he catches one of their faces underneath their hood. He can't tell if it's a man or woman, but like they're thin and their face kind of reflects like his does. And he feels very, very weird about these clones, which gives us more of this vibe that in Hadrian's mind, the only people he's really comfortable with are genetically modified and only genetically modified in a way that makes them more close to the Palatine class compared to these clones.
There is something kind of haunting about the clones for some reason. Like there's something, I don't know, it seems sort of
too
like,
thin.
Yeah, it's in like an army of them, right? Like that's like the theoretical process. It just, I don't know, it's interesting to imagine that being your, the force that's sort of following them. I don't know. It's.
Do you get whatchamacallit vibes, Unsullied vibes a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of Unsullied vibes almost, but there's something that feels like more, even more. Like it maybe took them a couple notches further because it feels like almost like this like emaciated, like I don't know, like ropey army of like I don't know. That's just like the vision that pops in my head. It's just the thinness of them and the sort of like inhuman kind of vibe that they have and the fact that they're literally clones, right? So it's a very creepy image.
But him saying a distorted image of himself reflected in the clone is another callback to the idea that homunculi and the Palatine both are born of the vat. Saltus is his cousin,
Yeah, it's once again the author challenging us to consider the fact that, they may look inhuman, but partly, like our Palatine and some of our Jadians here look pretty because of genetic modification. It's not any ethical different. Like they could have modified things differently, and it isn't straightforwardly that these people are inhuman any more than any of these other characters walking around the scene are actually.
Lauren, still talking a lot, is like, what a sight is this thing? This building is so crazy. And Hadrian spots that he has not one, not two, but 3 high matter swords on his belt as he's talking to Valka about the ruins.
Now, what could that possibly mean? I've got to tell you, because like so this is three lightsabers for one man. Like
I got Roronoa Zoro
Zorro,
vibes.
yeah, dude. That's immediately which I was like, is this dude putting a lightsaber in his mouth? That's what. Is that what's about to happen? It's so cool. I loved this detail is here. You know, there's not a laser sword fight in this chapter, but just this little like thing. Like the author's like, hey, check this out. He's got 3 lightsabers on his belt. You're like, what? Did that
hold them all? You know,
he can hold them all. Bro's got one in his armpit, and we're just like, yeah, it's just so cool. That just once again, the drip fed stuff is just, I just dig it. So good. Aloran's sick.
Aloran and Valka are talking about the ruins, and Valka's explaining giving her breakdown of the history of the site, you know, giving the same sort of thing that she's given to, I assume, many, many people when talking.
And they share a glance briefly here too, which is really interesting. It's almost like, have you ever been like driving to family's place and then have an argument in the car right before you then you have to pretend like your kid? Dude, it can either mean like, they're sort of sharing this moment of like, yeah, we're not getting along right now, or it could mean like they still have rapport, even though they're like, they haven't had time to like fix it yet. Just making eye contact, you know, it's just still the author telling us that there's tension here.
The verbiage gives us tension. Her eyes skated over me, caught me staring. So he's staring at her, and she catches him. And she like has this like quiet little smirk smile, and then turns it, like sees that he blushes, and then makes hhim look away almost, right, with her like. But the skating her eyes across him, like almost like looking up and down with him with disgust. Like it's so much vibes there that I love. As they are entering Kalaga, Kalima mentions to Aloran that it reminds her of the inside of Cielcin vessels.
Yeah.
To which Hadrian is like, whoa, Cielcin vessels? And so he, like a dog, just runs up and is like, wait, you've been aboard one of their ships? And she's like, who is this? Why is he talking? Why is this low life talking to me? And he introduces himself. He says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm Hadrian Marlowe. And then Aloran is like, oh, this is the duelist I heard about. You know, this guy's great. He's a good fighter, all this different stuff. So he gets kind of saved in this situation. But again, when it comes to Cielcin stuff, all of his sensibleness about anything related to the proper forms just goes right out the window.
It's funny because Hadrian does an out of turn thing, and then Aloran sort of jumps in and saves him with his own out of turn nonsense. They sort of like have this meeting here in the middle of jumping over social standards. Yeah. There's like this discussion about like, you know, maybe the ruins are like similar to the Cielcin stuff, because like, you know, the Cielcin stuff's all dark and stuff, and Valka is like, these can't be related. These ruins are too old. The Cielcin haven't been spacefaring long enough. You know, these ruins are older than us, and the Cielcin have been spacefaring less than me. So there's like this interesting dialogue that's going on between like the different ideas about the ruins, but she just can't let go of like the vibe that she's getting. Kalima can't let go of this dark, dank place of the Cielcin ships as compared to Kalaga. And
Valka immediately, we should note that like there's a lot of talk of like the specifics of the site and all this different stuff, and how Valka is having to obfuscate her real feelings in a way that would be acceptable to the Chantry, probably because Anais is here, but also because like anybody else outside is here. She's not saying the word quiet ever in this situation. She is presuming that it could be the human that did this, or it could be a species that was here before. We don't really know. You know, she's being very cagey and lying actually about what her beliefs truly are to be safe. But at the same time, when she gets faced with facts that she just disagrees with, like, nope, it couldn't be the Cielcin. It's nothing like their vessels. Like she's just like, nope, it's not. Yeah, it's not like this. This is 750,000 years old. No. The Cielcin, no. Like, but Hadrian then is like, wait, you captured a Cielcin ship? Where did you capture it? And she's like, yes, they are like caves on the inside. They're very, very dark. They have all these like this cave system. So we're getting world building around. We've heard about their ships that have like cathedrals like ice on them, but we really don't get a vision of what they look like or what they are like. Apparently, these ships are a series of tunnels and caves interconnected. Hadrian asks where they picked up this Cielcin vessel, and she says, Obatala was on the path that we were making here. Like we were, on our way here, and we happened to fight them at Obatala. And because they were already on patrol anyway, and so they just happened to stop this way. It was a stop along their path, which immediately beep, 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 to Hadrian. It's like, Obatala is one of the planets that Dimitri was going to stop at.
Yeah, which is a reminder. It was like the ship we were taking that we were on the journey from before we landed on Anais, right? So maybe we have a question about maybe there were Cielcin out there in the dark, and maybe that's what happened. There's like this weird question that we get. So it's who knows? Who knows? Still not enough there, but it's a little drip of something.
It raises Hadrian's hackles for sure.
Yes,
because they were supposed to be there, and maybe that's kind of responsible for some of the weirdness. He asks what they're doing there, and, Lawrence says, we're making for the front. Like, we're actually moving towards the front of the war.
Yeah.
And he notes, tries to envision the path. He gives them a few planets, Ubar, Obatala, Imash, Marinus, who's next. And, he's trying to picture throughout the galaxy the way that they're going. And he's like, man, they made quite a trip. They're making quite a trip. And mentions that, it's really fortunate that you guys have repelled an attack. It wasn't that big.
Yeah. That jumped out to me because that suggests to me that this isn't a straightforwardly simple defense here. We, with so little contact with the actual, what does combat look like? What does the Cielcin warfare look like? We don't know. Are they dangerous? Was this a close battle? What happened? Mm-hmm. Lauren, who's this Myskolos guy, saying, y'all are lucky to have made it through this, gives it, again, in the same way that Anais' fear gives it this weight. Him being this is y'all are lucky to have repelled this, it's, again, gives it this weight of if the Myskolos with 3 high matter swords is talking about how serious this is, then this is serious business. So scary stuff.
And then Anais asks, wait, you really, there's no way that, that you're here because of the battle that we fought to help us or whatever. And he's, no, it's much too soon, right? They've only been we find out that the time skip has been a couple months since they got word about the Cielcin raid on Imesh's system, right?
Yeah.
Also tells us it's been a long time that Volca has been mad at him. This is not a week later or whatever. This is maybe a month later, and you're just ooh.
What I think is important here is a reminder: space travel takes a long time in this universe, and what she's pointing out is that the Jadians can't be here to address the Cielcin because even if they waved the Jadians upon the Cielcin attacking, it takes too long to get here in order to help. And it sort of highlights this thing where, if the Cielcin are a raiding party that shows up at your planet, you're kind of on your own for a very long time until someone can eventually maybe show up to fight if your planet is not already gone, right? Because it just takes too long to travel. First time I think we've discussed this kind of dynamic in this context and how it affects the war. But that's why she points that out. It's so y'all are here for a completely separate reason because it can't be that because that just happened. It would take you years and years to get here, not a couple of months.
And we sort of have a pause in the chapter, and basically the Jadians, Lady Kalima's this is, Lauren's wow, this is an amazing sight. You're so blessed, Anais and Sir Elomas, to live here. This is so awesome. And Lady Kalima is right. Yes, it is all well and good, but we do really have to make ourselves scarce to go back to the capital. And Elomas is are you sure you don't want a glass of wine? I can't convince you to stay for one glass or whatever. And then we cut to Hadrian skulking in the cave, trying to not be noticed in this situation.
Brooding.
Brooding, of course, he always is. He mentions that this isn't the first time that he's been on one of these escort situations. They, it is kind of like the zoo or going to the museum or something like that. Other foreign dignitaries have been here before and have gone through this process because and he somewhat enjoys it sometimes because normally the people that are coming to see this also have an interest in Cenobites, which of course Hadrian does. And so he likes interacting with some people. We hear about him interacting with somebody from the Izumo group who came the day before the Cielcin incursion at the end of the system. And there's been some other people as well, the Norman prospectors that apparently are, ended up just being grave robbers and things like that. So it's not all good people that show up to this thing. Sometimes they're of bad intent as well.
Yeah.
And as he is hiding, he's brooding on the stuff with Volca and him being an ignorant savage from a backward country who still believes in fairy stories. And he hates the fact that, like, you know, he's thinking about this way and he's like, I'm so stupid. Why did I even tell her all this stuff? I shouldn't have told her anything. I didn't even know if it was real.
Yeah.
Now that she's pissed at him or whatever, like, he regrets totally even mentioning the whole thing, even if he was being honest in the situation.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to something about relationships that's really important, is that you have to be careful about, so vulnerability is hard and you have to be careful about who you're vulnerable with, but you also have to be mindful about like how you treat people when they're vulnerable with you, because they may never be vulnerable with you again if you punish them too harshly for their vulnerability. It may be the case that had Volca expressed her doubt differently than the anger that she expressed, it wouldn't have had as much damage on their relationship for the time being. It's possible she'd be like, listen, like, not saying you're lying to me, but that doesn't make any sense. I don't know how any of that could be true. But no, she went like full blown, like, you're stupid, barbarian, liar. Like, so he's obviously, the lesson he learned isn't, you know, like, what I saw wasn't true or something like that. The lesson is like, I can't talk to Volca. That's what he feels. And this guy's like, I shouldn't have shared because I've risked vulnerability and it was punished rather than being hurt and cared for. So we'll have to see how they recover, if they do.
He is like brooding on this. He touches the stone again. He's like, you know, was it even real? Like, did I even... He feels nothing. He's expecting to try and feel the coldness again. He doesn't feel anything. And he's questioning himself. And he's just like muttering to himself, like, I just don't know when to shut my own mouth. And he hears a woman's voice. And he's like, for a moment, he thinks, oh, maybe it's Volca. And no, it's not Volca. It's
Anais.
It's hello. And he turns on his face. And it's Anais Motaro, who stands in the doorway, who is like, he gives this very beautiful description of her. Like, she looks stunning.
Yeah.
And she mentions that, hey, you know, Elamas is talking their ears off right now. And so, you know, I don't want to talk with them. You know, I might as well like come hang out with you. I thought you got lost or whatever. And she's again, continually being pushy, saying, you really should come back with us.
Again.
And, yeah. Again and again.
It's too much. It's too much. Like he said no multiple times. She says it again. And she's trying to talk him into it now. She's just continuing. Like, I feel that it feels like this section is so manipulative because we get, you know, like, it's going to be okay. Like, it'll be, you'll like it if you come back. And then it's like, I don't know, maybe it won't be safe there because, you know, if the Cielcin come.
He tries everything. He tries, you know, like, you're going to make the Jadians wait while I pack all my things. Like, that's the first thing he says.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to take me hours to pack my trunk to get back. And then he's like, well, the Cielcin are probably going to come, right? I mean, the Jadians seem to think so. So maybe it's not safe in Borsivo. He's just trying any excuse to get her off his case. And she just is not having it. And so she like sneaks up behind him and then wraps her arms around him.
Yeah.
And this is the point where he starts to feel and understand even at a new depth the way that Kyra must have felt when he was in that penthouse with her.
Yeah. I really appreciate that Rocchio decided to express this discomfort with a male character in a story. Actually, I don't know why. I don't feel like that I've ever read a story where there's been a guy who's felt like his physical boundaries have been crossed in like a romantic sexual way. I actually don't know. It's like very rarely comes up in stories, but it's like a real thing where like,
especially not in science fiction.
Not the genre for it, right? But it's kind of insightful because, you know, it shows the audience like it's very believably uncomfortable, right? Because you're just like, I have told you no over and over. I'm giving you excuses. I'm trying to be polite. And then you like come up and hug me. Like, well, I'm not, like, what are we doing? Like, it just feels like I'm sending every signal and you're just not taking no for an answer.
She's not used to hearing no.
Right.
And I love how Rocchio gives the dichotomy of like, despite the fact that he's uncomfortable in this situation, he hasn't been held by a woman since Cat, right? Since like, other than a handhold from Volca here and there, like being held by a woman, and she's taller than him and she's like got her cheek to the back of his head. Like he's like freezing, but it also kind of feels good. also he feels wildly uncomfortable with the situation. It's so complex.
Hey, I appreciate that complexity because in this moment, it feels like there's tension between, the isolation he feels and the fact that he's genuinely uncomfortable, doesn't want this. It's like kind of both. It's this weird human contradictory experience that we have that's like a real thing. Like you could see someone falling into this. And I think this grows that as she starts to talk about like this idea that like, listen, like this doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like we can work this out. It doesn't have to be this thing where it's weird and all this. I thought it was important to note here that
it doesn't have to be like him being a stud is what she's saying. Like,
right.
Like Hadrian sees it as I'm sold to this family. I'm a stud. That's all I'm good for. She's like, it doesn't have to be that way. And so she's trying to bargain with him in this situation.
Yeah. Because the problem is that like, if you strip any bad intention from her and you remove like all social dynamics and stuff, is it technically true that they could fall in love? Maybe, right? The problem is that when you remove somebody's choice, you like prevent them from being able to have like an actual relationship, because if you can't choose differently, how could you possibly enter in good faith? You have to be able to decide that you want to be there in order for something to work, and deciding you want to be there if you have no other option, right? You can't, if things were different, there's some alternate future where they have a relationship, but without him having a choice, that just seems impossible for him. Like in the place he is. But like
the bird cares not that the cage is gilded.
Yeah. But like I think she, lays this picture out trying to do the tempting thing here. Like, listen, this will be good. You could be a lord. We'll have children. We'll do all this stuff. It's like this idea that this could be like an attractive thing or something like that if there were a different person in this situation. But Hadrian just isn't that guy. It just isn't that person. And so it's not going to work. Yes.
If we look through the frame of the 8 forms of obedience, where are we with her here? It's not out of fear of pain, right? What are we doing?
This is an interesting question. Where are we on the, let's see, we got to recall the 8 forms of obedience. So we got devotion, fear, love.
Fear of pain, fear of the other, love for the person of the hierarch, loyalty to the office of the hierarch, respect for the laws of men in heaven, piety, compassion, and devotion. I don't think this is fear.
Yeah, I agree.
So we're probably in like loyalty or love of the hierarch in this situation.
Yeah.
We're not at piety. We're not respecting the laws of men in heaven or compassion or devotion. But it's ironic, right? If that's where we sit on the form of obedience or whatever, of course, Hadrian doesn't have any love or loyalty to any office or any hierarch. But she's sort of arguing for that. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. It's like she's tempting him with something that he's truly not attracted to, right? And so this temptation isn't going to work because of that. I will also say I don't think she's very sophisticated, and so she may think that she's trying to generate this like compassionate relationship by saying it'll be okay or something like that. But it's just like it just misses how Hadrian would obviously feel in this situation, right?
Yeah, she's more in the Crispin school of like not thinking about anybody else's stuff with that. Right. I mean, she's probably never been told she's the 3rd most powerful person on this planet. Right. Or the 2nd. Like she's never been told no her entire life, except maybe by her dad's,
Yeah. He tries to shut the whole thing down. He says like, listen, I can't talk about this anymore. My father cast me out. I think this is important because he still obviously would be grieving, right? Like this situation is not just like, hey, Hadrian, we can do this. We'll be happy. Let's come back to Borisiva with me. He's like, he just lost his family, bro. He just had a vision of whatever the end of the whatever that was, and then got into a fight with the person he had to cry. He's like not in the place for this. Like there's no universe where he can, and he's just saying like, listen, I can't talk about it. He's feeling like an object, right? He's feeling objectified. And then she kisses him.
Well, not only that, so let's read some of that. She still didn't.
Please do.
Like he answers to her like, your dad poached me. I'm like some sort of racehorse. Still, she didn't answer. Only clung tighter. Was she trembling? Was she afraid, or was that only me? Wordlessly, she reached up, touched my face with one hand, and turned me around. Leaden, I turned to face her, to look her in the face through the gloom. I teetered on the edge of further speech, opened my mouth to find the words. She kissed me. I froze. In the chill of that cavern, she was warm, willing, and I did not want her. It isn't like that, she whispered. I held her at arm's length. It's exactly like that. Wow, what a 360 situation that Hadrian has experienced here.
It's really bad. It's really bad, especially because I think it's worth reminding, still in this moment, this isn't really a choice. Like she's framing it as a choice, but it's not a choice. The whole time it's like, it'll be okay. And he's still not allowed to choose, like, the entire time. And I think even in this moment, like, I think it's worth reminding, there's weird consequences if he just shoved her off of him, for example. Big problem, right? Like, so it pervades the entire situation. He freezes, tenses up, obviously is uncomfortable, and
even him asking her to let him go is a transgression, kind of.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Given what we know about this, she leans in heavy on the idea of like listen, you'll be the Lord. It'll be all this stuff. It'll be great. And he's once again giving more excuses, like, listen, your court's not going to accept me after Gilliam. And then she's like. We'll make them. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's just nonstop. And then as this continues, she kisses him again, and then disaster that was obviously going to happen strikes, and Volka walks in right as it happens.
As if it couldn't get worse for Hadrian and for their relationship. And of course, she says she doesn't care, which she may not care because we know her sexual ethic or whatever from earlier, but she probably cares a little bit. I could be me projecting onto Volka, because maybe she doesn't. I feel like she cares. I don't know why I feel like she cares. I feel like she would be really bothered it. And if the minimum, if she doesn't care personally, she's judging Hadrian for it. Is my thought. Because she just said, like, at the end of the last chapter, like, maybe you're just bored of being with us out here and you're not used to being with your Palatine women, right? Like, essentially. Yeah. The narrator would like to believe that she said, I don't care too sharply, too quickly. Like she was pretending not to care when she really did. Yeah. But that's the narrator thinking that he would like it to be that way. He doesn't know. That's a pretty honest description from the unreliability, like hinting to an unreliability of like, okay, maybe I misread the situation here, but in hindsight, I'd like to think that she had said it too quickly or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What a rough response to this apocalyptic vision that Hadrian has had, and seeing this really cool sword master only to be treated like a racehorse and a piece of meat. Yeah, we've got the end of the universe, maybe the end of his relationship, maybe, and maybe Pale Kings and cathedral ships, cradles with nothing in them, like, and pushy princesses. The whole camp. Yeah. So. This is the coolest set of chapters in chapter 65 in particular is the coolest chapter in the whole book, in my opinion. And we're really getting towards the end of it here, Drew. We really are. Folks, we're less than, probably count the number of episodes left on one hand. So it's getting here. We're going to be going rapidly towards the conclusion, whatever that will be. We've got the relationship on the line, and we've got who knows what else on the line. So it'll be exciting to see what else happens. And we will continue as we always do, always forward. And always down. And we will see you folks next time. See ya. Devil's Rest Book Club is Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Today's episode discussed chapters 64, 65, and 66 of Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, copyright 2018. Empire of Silence was originally published by Daw Books on July 3rd, 2018. Quality editing and original music by Cameron Elston. Find us on YouTube. Contact us at devilsrestbookclub@gmail.com. Devil's Rest Book Club is a production of This Quiet Pods. This episode copyright 2026, Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Thanks for joining us. And remember, rage is blindness.